Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today's topic is going to be the top 5 most overrated Jets on the 2019 roster. But before we get started, I just want to mention that you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now that games are back, I'm going to be live tweeting on Twitter, obviously, and posting a ton of GIFs of highlights, so you're going to make sure you're going to want to follow. All right, so now let's get to the list where I'm going to go through the top 5 most overrated players on the roster, and I'm going to do an underrated players too, so just don't spin it that I'm always negative. I'm not, I promise, but I'm going to start this segment out with the top 5 most overrated, and I am going to start this list with Leonard Williams. Williams was the 6th overall pick from the 2015 draft and was considered the best player from that draft class. If you remember, he was a beast coming out of USC, and he was a can't-miss prospect who fell to the Jets 6th overall. Some called him a generational talent, and he has yet to really reach that generational talent level. He is a good, not great, but a good NFL starter, and from a 6th overall pick, that's not exactly what you want. Last year, he had 5 sacks and 42 combined tackles on the defensive line, which is a pretty good season, but all in all, Henry Anderson was the best Jets defensive lineman last year. And if you are this supposed generational talent, you should be performing better than Henry Anderson, who, again, was very good and fine, but you have to play at an elite level. And there is this notion that Leonard Williams was double teamed all the time, which is just simply not true. If you look at the numbers, Henry Anderson actually was double teamed more than Leonard Williams. So this notion that he was double teamed, he could never get, off the double team blocking, garbage. He is a good, again, I don't want it to seem like I absolutely hate Leonard Williams. That's not the case. I think he's a good starter. I just don't think he's this elite level starter that some Jets fans and some media members too even think that he is. Pro Football Focus graded Williams as the 30th ranked interior defensive lineman out of 112. Again, good, but not elite. You want him to be in the top 10 if he is someone who's an elite player, which he hasn't been yet. Still, he's just 25 years old, so he can potentially have a breakout year, especially with the addition of Quinnen Williams, but I am not saying that Leonard Williams is elite just yet. Next up on my list is Shermaine Johnson. He was given a big-time free agent deal last year, and he really underperformed in year 1. He only played 10 games. Granted, he did have 4 interceptions in that 10 games, and he was rated as 74.9 by Pro Football Focus. He really wasn't great, and if you looked at the eye test, you could tell that he was struggling. He was not the same press cover corner that we are used to seeing. Now Greg Williams is coming in as a defensive coordinator, and there's hopes that Greg Williams can get him back to the player that he was with the Rams, because that's where Williams coached him up. But he's getting older in age. He's 29 years old now. That's when cornerbacks usually tend to slow down. I don't love this long-term contract. This could get real ugly real fast, and he desperately needs to bounce back in year 2 in order to save this contract. In addition to inconsistent play and injuries, he also had some costly penalties, especially in the Titans and Green Bay game, which that comes to mind in their 2 games that they lost, and granted they were out of it at that point. But if you are trying to compete, which the Jets likely will, because I believe they're going to finish between either 7, 8, or 9 wins and be on the cusp of a playoff spot, but if you want to go over that hump and win 10 games, maybe 11 if you're absolutely lucky, you can't have those kinds of penalties late in games that cost you games. And Shermaine Johnson had 2 last year that absolutely stick out to me. He sat out in the last game for disciplinary reasons, so only 10 games for him. Not very good. He really isn't a number 1 corner to me anymore. I think he'd be an okay number 2, but he's being paid to be a shutdown corner, and he's just not. Coming in at number 3 on my list is Brandon Shell, the starting right tackle. He had 14 games last year, and he missed the last 2 due to injuries, coming back from an injury, but most people have already penciled him in as the definite starter, and I'm not so sure. I don't think you could absolutely say that Chuma Edoga isn't better than him in year 1. I know most people think that Chuma Edoga is going to be ready for 2020 and take over for Shell, but to me, I think that you could probably make the case that he's better than Shell already. He's a decent pass protector, Shell is, but he is absolutely awful against the run, and that might become a liability because someone else we're going to talk about real soon. The right side of the line for the Jets really isn't all that great. Granted, they have a new center, which is going to help a ton in Ryan Khalil, but on the left side, you're pretty solid in Beachum, Osalemi, and Ryan Khalil. Right side, not so much. Shell really is a replacement level starter, and I would not be shocked if Chuma Edoga beats him out at some point this year and gets playing time, but definitely by next year. Shell is not a long-term answer for this New York Jets offensive line. Next up, I'm going running back, and I'm going to talk about Elijah McGuire. A lot of people like Elijah McGuire. He was drafted in the late rounds of 2017, and he came on and was okay at best. You can maybe convince me that he was okay. Unfortunately, due to injuries last year to Bilal Powell and Isaiah Crowell, he was your starter for the final 3 games of the year, and it was brutal. Over the course of his career, he averages just 3 yards per carry, and in the final 3 games that he started last year, he averaged 2.33, 2.50, and 2.28 yards per carry. Not nearly enough what you're looking for in a starting running back, and I don't even think that he could be a decent number 2 running back. He is at absolute highest ceiling RB3, and I would not want to see him as RB3. Right now, the Jets have one of the better running back groups in all the National Football League in Le'Veon Bell, Ty Montgomery, and Bilal Powell. Trenton Cannon and Elijah McGuire should not be on the roster. Yes, he flashed in the passing game slightly, but that's still not enough to give him a roster spot. There is a lot more talented players on this Jets roster, and to me, I think he is a practice squad player on just about 25 other teams in the league. The last guy on my list is Bryan Winters. I hinted at that one earlier. The right side of the Jets offensive line really scares me. Winters played really well in 2015 and 2016 for the Jets, got himself a pretty new contract, but in 2017 and 2018, he took a little bit of a step back and realistically wasn't all that great. He allowed a ton of sacks last year, 5.5 if we're being exact, and he had 6 costly penalties too. Not all that great from Bryan Winters, who realistically is probably a below average starter at this point in his career. He was ranked 34th out of 77 guards eligible by Pro Football Focus, which is pretty much right in the middle, but ultimately he really wasn't all that great, and I think he's a fringe starter in the NFL. If Joe Douglas is doing his job, neither Bryan Winters or Brandon Shell are the starters in 2020, and ideally they are both just stopgaps for this year, and hopefully they can patch up that right side, but it really does scare me. So to recap, my top 5 most overrated players on the New York Jets is Bryan Winters, Elijah McGuire, Brandon Shell, Shermaine Johnson, and Leonard Williams. So let me know what you think in the comments. Am I too harsh? Who would your top 5 most overrated Jets be? Get at me in the comments or on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.